You stand in a frozen chamber of the Kremlin. The winter wind bites through the cracks in the thick stone walls, and the dim candlelight casts trembling shadows across the polished marble floor. The air smells faintly of smoke, wax, and the cold iron of the city beyond. You hear a footstep echo, slow, deliberate, heavy. Ivan's shadow stretches across the walls, massive and distorted, as though it were the very embodiment of rage itself. He approaches, eyes burning with fury and something darker, something unbearable. And before you can breathe, before any warning can reach your lips, a cane rises high in his hand. A crack splits the silence. Bone meets wood, a prince collapses. A son, loyal and desperate, pleading to save a kingdom, gasps for air that will never come. A dynasty trembles on the edge of ruin. Was this murder, or madness? In a hospital today, anger claims fathers in ways we barely dare to name. Domestic violence statistics reveal that fathers' rage too often leaves families shattered. And yet, centuries ago, in a candlelit Kremlin, rage claimed something far greater, a nation's future. History does not always collapse in battle. Sometimes it collapses in a single room. You feel the chill of history brushing your skin, the realization that power and love can collide in fatal ways. You walk through the icy halls of Ivan's childhood palace, the walls heavy with shadows and whispers. A boy huddles in a corner, shivering, eyes wide as he watches the courtiers' cruel laughter. His mother lies poisoned in her bed, still and cold, leaving a vacuum of warmth in a place already filled with menace. Each whisper, each mocking glance cuts deeper than any blade could, teaching him that the world is merciless and that trust is a dangerous illusion. Animals are brought before him, bound and struggling, their cries piercing through the stone corridors. The young Ivan is made to watch, to internalize the lessons of cruelty, the necessity of fear, the inevitable nature of pain. Hunger gnaws at his belly, humiliation burns at his pride, and yet he learns that survival is the only rule that matters. There is no safety, no comfort, only lessons carved into memory through terror. By 16, he is crowned Tsar of Russia, but the crown is heavier than any adult could carry. He wears it like armor, forged in fire and sorrow. Every glance from the nobility is a reminder of betrayal, every whisper a seed of vengeance. Anastasia enters his life then, a light amidst the shadows, a fragile warmth that softens, if only briefly, the edges of his fury. For the first time, he feels the stirrings of love, though fear remains his most faithful companion. Yet the boy learns that love is fragile, and that fear is eternal. The lessons of his youth, the shadows of cruelty, and the endless hunger for survival shape a ruler who will wield terror as a tool, who will understand that mercy may destroy him faster than rebellion. A boy who grows in fear learns to rule through fear. Even kings carry the scars of childhood, and those scars often dictate the future of the nations they govern. Anastasia dies suddenly, leaving Ivan alone with grief that twists into obsession and suspicion. Was it poison, illness, or betrayal? He cannot distinguish friend from foe, husband from murderer, reality from fear. Paranoia seeps into every corner of his mind, and he responds with a creation that will terrorize Russia for decades: the Oprichnina. This private army of enforcers is tasked with rooting out traitors, no matter how loyal, and punishing them in the cruelest of ways. The streets of Moscow echo with screams, impalements, and the silent terror of a population under siege. Ivan's son watches as the world he knew turns into a nightmare. Each public execution is a lesson, each impaled noble a warning that loyalty has limits when fear reigns supreme. The boy grows into a man understanding that to survive under Ivan's rule requires constant vigilance, yet he dares to dream of a day when reason might return. That hope is fragile, almost naive, but it keeps him moving forward, striving to protect a kingdom teetering on the edge of chaos. The Tsar's mind continues to unravel. Paranoia becomes law, suspicion becomes policy. Every shadow conceals a potential enemy, every whisper of dissent a personal betrayal. The people learn quickly: mercy is a sin, loyalty is dangerous, and survival requires submission. It is in this climate of fear that Ivan's son must navigate, attempting to preserve not just his own life, but the fragile thread of Russia's governance. And yet, even amidst terror, he sees glimpses of his father's complexity. Ivan is not only a monster, he is a man shaped by fear, grief, and loss. Understanding this is both a comfort and a curse. The son begins to learn the paradox of ruling under tyranny. Empathy and strategy are as crucial as strength and fear. A kingdom can survive hunger. It cannot survive paranoia. Paranoia may protect a king temporarily, but it can also destroy a dynasty entirely. Prince Ivan is no weakling. Brave, intelligent, and beloved by the army, he represents the future of Russia. His father, however, sees a reflection of his own mortality and vulnerability in his son. Every confident glance, every command, every step toward the throne is a reminder of power slipping beyond his control. Pride and paranoia collide, and the palace becomes a battlefield where bloodless wars rage silently. The princess suffers a miscarriage after Ivan strikes her for improper behavior. Grief and rage intertwine, reverberating through the stone halls like an echo of doom. The young Ivan confronts his father, not with weapons, but with the courage of someone who believes in duty and the survival of the realm. Words clash, authority clashes, and a family once bound by loyalty and blood fractures under the weight of fear and fury. In this charged atmosphere, the son's bravery becomes a threat. Every act of defiance is a spark in the powder keg. Ivan's rage, honed through years of suspicion and cruelty, cannot tolerate a challenge, even one born of love and loyalty. The dynamics of power, authority, and familial bonds twist into something lethal, and the line between father and adversary blurs. The court watches silently, trapped in fear, unable to intervene as father and son struggle not only over succession but over the very soul of Russia. The confrontation is a microcosm of Ivan's reign, love, duty, and ambition crushed beneath the weight of tyranny. A crown does not make a man strong. Fear does. Power fears only one thing: the future standing brave enough to challenge it. You are in the chamber when the confrontation reaches its breaking point. Words fly like daggers, accusations sharpened by grief and fear. Each syllable echoes off the marble walls, carrying tension that seems almost tangible. The young Ivan, kneeling yet defiant, pleads for reason, for mercy, for the chance to preserve the fragile thread of Russia's future. But Ivan the Terrible sees only defiance, only a challenge to his absolute authority. The cane rises. Time seems to slow. Crack. Bone snaps. Flesh collides with cold marble. Blood spreads across the floor, a crimson testament to the consequences of unrestrained rage. The prince gasps, his life draining away in front of the eyes of all who are present. The shock freezes the room. Courtiers, guards, and servants alike are paralyzed by horror, unable to intervene as history unfolds in its most brutal form. Ivan screams, prayers spilling from trembling lips, then collapses into anguished howls. His face, once a mask of terrorizing authority, now shows vulnerability and despair, though it is too late. The son who could have carried Russia into a new era lies motionless. In that instant, the heart of a nation dies alongside the prince, and the walls of the Kremlin seem to weep silently. Outside, the winter wind howls through the city. News of the tragedy spreads quickly, and the people whisper of fear, loss, and betrayal. Even centuries later, historians and psychologists will study this moment, recognizing that the greatest destruction often occurs not in war, but in the private chambers of those who wield unchecked power. A nation died before its king did. The greatest empires are most vulnerable from within. Blood may stain the floor, but fear stains the soul of a kingdom. Ivan collapses mentally after the fatal strike, consumed by guilt, rage, and despair. His next son, Fifer, is ill-equipped to rule, gentle, indecisive, and ill-prepared for the responsibilities of a nation on the brink. Famine spreads, civil unrest grows, and the once proud Russian Empire enters the infamous time of troubles. The consequences of one single act, one uncontrolled moment of rage, ripple across the land. The loss of an heir is more than a family tragedy, it is a national catastrophe. Nobles scramble for power, peasants starve in the streets, and the machinery of governance falters. Russia, once formidable, finds itself weakened from the inside. The political vacuum left by Ivan's action sets the stage for decades of instability, civil war, and foreign intervention. Even as Fifer ascends, it becomes clear that the crown cannot compensate for the absence of strength, vision, and authority. Russia's potential future, bright and ambitious, is now compromised. A kingdom, like a living organism, cannot survive when its foundation, leadership, is fractured by fear and personal tragedy. This chapter of Russian history is a stark reminder that rulers are not merely symbols. Their choices, their impulses, their moments of uncontrolled emotion shape entire nations. The ripple of one father's rage reshapes centuries of destiny. When the heir fell, the nation followed. Legacy is not built on fear, it is destroyed by it. History is not a relic, it repeats. Tyranny still exists today, not always in palaces but in offices, governments, and homes. Leaders who govern through ego rather than wisdom replicate Ivan's mistakes. Domestic violence, unchecked aggression, and narcissistic control destroy lives daily. Power, when untempered by compassion and reason, continues to poison families and nations alike. Psychologists have long studied the effects of unchecked authority. Paranoia, obsession, and cruelty are not isolated to historical tyrants. They persist wherever power is absolute and accountability is absent. Generational trauma spreads silently, shaping the behaviors and decisions of future leaders, echoing the path Ivan set centuries ago. Even ordinary families experience similar patterns. Fathers losing control, children silenced by fear, households destabilized by anger. All are modern reflections of what unfolded in the Kremlin. History, in this sense, becomes a mirror. Ivan's actions remind us that the personal and political are inseparable when power and emotion collide. And yet, within these echoes lies hope. Understanding history's lessons allows us to break cycles of violence and misrule. Awareness of human weakness, our tendency toward rage, paranoia, and cruelty, can be the first step toward tempering authority with empathy and wisdom. A crown can sit on a broken mind. History repeats not because we forget, but because we refuse to confront ourselves. You stand at the grave of the prince who never ruled. Snow swirls around your feet, cold and silent as memory itself. The wind bites, whispering through the trees, carrying the weight of history into your bones. Ivan's legacy is not one of glory, but of fear, sorrow, and regret. His own rage destroyed both family and nation, leaving a scar on Russian history that will never fully heal. Even the mightiest kingdoms fall when rulers cannot master their hearts. Silence, grief, and reflection are as powerful as armies. The consequences of anger extend far beyond the moment, reaching generations, shaping nations, and leaving trails of sorrow for centuries. The Kremlin's walls may stand, but the human cost within them is immeasurable. The fragility of legacy becomes clear here. Power is a fragile flame, easily extinguished by the very hands that seek to protect it. Ivan's life is a warning that cruelty, unchecked fury, and failure to temper impulses can devastate not only loved ones but entire societies. At the edge of the grave, you realize the truth: the strongest kingdoms are built not on fear or violence, but on temperance, wisdom, and compassion. History preserves this lesson, haunting those who seek power without understanding its responsibility. The strongest kingdom is a peaceful heart. Empires crumble when rulers cannot govern themselves first. The palace corridor lies silent, candles flickering against the marble walls. Shadows stretch and twist, whispering the secrets of centuries. Ivan kneels over a body he doomed, his prayers unanswered, his grief endless. The air is heavy with remorse and the weight of history itself. Through the walls, through time, history speaks. Power is meaningless if it cannot protect those we love. Every empire, every family, every household touched by cruelty carries the same warning. Unchecked anger and ego are far deadlier than any sword. Even today, these echoes remain. Tyrants rise, families fracture, and nations stumble under the burden of leaders who fail to master themselves. The lessons of the past are persistent, whispering through every moment of misrule, every act of violence born from unchecked pride. And in the silent corridors of memory, Ivan's shadow lingers. His tragedy is timeless, a reminder that power without compassion is a curse, that love ignored is the seed of ruin, and that history's harshest lessons are those carved by human hands. Power is useless if it cannot protect those we love. The past is never silent. It watches, it warns, it waits for us to heed its lessons.